Hey, so in the last video I put up, I discussed what I'm going to refer to from now on as the wall. The digital wall. What happened to the billion results they claimed they had about this topic? Where did those millions of pages go? Between the first page and this page, where now there's only 422 results and I just scrolled through them all, and that's it. There's basically like a digital wall here, and I can't get out of it or past it. And astute commenter Radio Liberty noted in the comments of that video, it reminded them of Dark City and how no one can rightly remember how to get to Shell Beach anymore, which is spot on. And I actually changed the tile art of the video to the wall with the Shell Beach mural from that film. But I don't want to comment further on that because spoilers, and speaking of spoiler alerts, someone called me out, and I guess I did ruin the ending of The Truman Show for anyone left who hasn't seen it in that last video on this topic, but that movie did come out in the late 90s, and I have done so many videos talking about it. In fact, I did a whole video specifically talking about that film in relation to modern society. And I guess I figured people had over 2 decades to watch it, but still I should have warned people. And my last video on this topic definitely does spoil the ending of The Truman Show. But then again, that video also kind of spoils the internet, at least as far as popular search engine use goes. As people in the comments noted, there used to be this magical land full of interesting woo on this internet. And anyone could just take a casual stroll and accidentally fall down thought-provoking rabbit holes of information that really did broaden your mind at times, or at least have the potential to, or at least come up against your preconceived notions so that you can analyze critically what you believe and decide, like, is this really true? Am I legitimately believing this thing? What are my beliefs on this matter? Having beliefs challenged is actually a good thing. If you don't have something to bounce your belief off of, how do you even know if what you believe is true if it doesn't hold up to the scrutiny of some opposing information, right? And I know for a fact that the search results didn't used to cut off at 43 pages, because for the minds of men, Aaron and I both were knee-deep in searches on all of the search engines, deep digging around, trying to verify things for hours. And I remember being up in the hundreds on numbers of pages of search results, just looking for truth crumbs. If you were an American kid back in the days before ubiquitous smartphones, you might recall playing out in the yard, which is a thing we used to do once upon a time, and trying to dig to China in your backyard. Did you ever do that? Did you ever try to dig a hole to China in your yard? I am not sure what started that trend, but I do remember doing it as a kid. My stepbrothers and I did it. Aaron says he remembers getting together with all of his friends on his block, and they were all going to do it. And they really, I think they dug down like 6 feet or something in the yard. But the parents they thought it was cute, so they let them do it. But this was definitely a thing kids here used to do for some reason. And the control that has now been placed on this internet search is like putting a cement barrier a few inches under the soil. So you can't really explore outside of your backyard. Not really, except superficially, right? It's like telling people in that oh-so-trustworthy infomercial voice, "Don't worry, folks, our experts have got everything figured out here. There's nothing more to find. All the mysteries have been solved. We're just going to lock current reality down, like that's it, and there's nothing more to discover unless and until we say so. Have a good night."
I'd like to be an explorer, like the great Magellan.
Oh, you're too late. There's really nothing left to explore.
I mean, you've got to admit the hubris of that is pretty freaking amazing. Humans pretending to know everything about everything to the exclusion of all other possibility. I mean, some people say a lot of stats are BS, and they probably are, but there are claims out there, like the World Atlas is claiming that humans have only managed to really explore about 5% of the ocean floor. I mean, we're learning strange new things about the nature of reality every day. Interesting theories about stuff. The idea that information should be this tightly controlled because giant tech corporations or government institutions or anybody has the answer to everything is just kind of ridiculous and silly. But people still pray to Google like it's a god with some of these search queries, when all they're really doing is asking a giant container of human knowledge in a digital format run by a human-programmed AI to give them answers. Knowledge that has now obviously, blatantly been truncated, curated, culled through, as if actual reality could ever just fit neatly into 400 results, and that's it. Data's only valuable in how it's collected, analyzed, and presented, right? Otherwise, it's just a gob of stuff. So, the search engine results have now revealed that the internet it's not this giant sprawling mansion filled with twists and turns and endless hallways going off in all directions, but instead, it's essentially like one really long hallway with doors that have obviously been digitally wallpapered over, so it looks like there's only one way to actually go. And there were people saying that it's very depressing to know that that's true. I mean, it was one thing to think that's what's going on, but it's another to actually see it and know it, right? And I agree, it sucks. I think it totally sucks. I think it's one of those things that really is to the detriment of every single person in the 21st century that they've done that. But I've been ruminating over this now for a couple of days, and I think there's something else here that needs to be pointed out.
I have to solve this labyrinth, but there aren't any turns or any openings or anything. It just goes on and...
Well, you ain't looking right. It's full of openings. It's just you ain't seeing them.
The truth should never have to censor competition. Because if something is true, and it's just authentic, and it has that authenticity to it, what does it have to fear from a false word spoken against it? And some have made the claim that if they have to work this hard to censor information, then the information must have a point, or possibly be true, which I get as a logical fallacy argument, but you could see why people would at least wonder if that isn't the case. I mean, historically speaking, who have the censors always been? It's power-hungry leaders, control freaks, absolute monarchs, dictators, despots, right?
In a dictatorship, that the only thing you have left when all your power is taken from you is the truth. And if you read Orwell, if you look at 1984, it's why he spends so much time talking about how the power he was writing about in that fictional account is attempting to redefine reality, redefine the past, redefine the future. Because if you can't hold on to reality, you have no premise to scrutinize the government for whether they're telling you the truth or not. And it is a war in that sense, hybrid war. So information in that war becomes your most powerful weapon.
Righteous people with truth on their side are not afraid of criticism, questions, having a basic conversation. They don't have to shut down public debate because it would seem they're too scared to even have a debate, which is something that I have seen. I mean, just think about the concept of science. We live in a supposedly scientific era. But science wouldn't be science without the ability to alter itself as new information of merit is discovered and becomes available. Otherwise, humanity would still be crawling around on its hands and knees in the nether realms of the Dark Ages, and humanity will return to those nether realms if they don't get this under control. Because once you start stripping out that part of science and strip that away from science, and you say, no, it's just all consensus, we're not going to look at opposing information. We're not going to consider opposing information. We're not even going to allow other people to consider it. We are going to shut down debate. We're going to shut down opposition. What you get left with is dogma. Fine if that's what they want to do with it, but stop trying to pretend that that's scientific anymore, because that's not. Ultimately, what this all comes down to is belief. Humanity's beliefs. The control over what that is. This definition of the noun belief that I'm about to read to you comes from my super huge old 19th century Webster's dictionary. This definition says that belief, the noun belief, means to assent to a proposition or affirmation, or the acceptance of a fact, opinion, or assertion as real or true without immediate personal knowledge. Reliance upon word or testimony, partial or full assurance without positive knowledge or absolute certainty. persuasion, conviction, confidence. So then to believe, the verb, is to exercise belief in, to credit upon the authority or testimony of another, to be persuaded of the truth of upon evidence furnished by reasons, arguments, and deductions of the mind, or by circumstances other than personal knowledge, to regard or accept as true, to place confidence in, to think, to consider, as to believe a person, a statement, or a doctrine, to have a persuasion approaching certainty. So first of all, if someone truly believes what he or she is saying, that's what that means to believe. A belief is something approaching certainty. If I believe something, it means I'm basically pretty certain in what I'm asserting. What about that definition sounds very fragile to you? I mean, that's basically certainty. It shouldn't be fragile. If my beliefs are so delicate and so fragile that I have to bully and coerce others to try and force them to agree with my beliefs to the exclusion of all others, to try and have them confirmed over and over again, and hide everything else that isn't what I believe, that kind of shows a weakness in my beliefs, doesn't it? I mean, engaging in that type of behavior is actually kind of evidence that the person who's doing it may not really believe what they claim to believe. It's like putting up a billboard about how fragile the merits of one's views really are. And people are going to question it just based on that. When censorship and coercion and force are applied to knowledge, it doesn't garner trust. It doesn't garner respect. It doesn't mean people actually believe in their minds whatever that is if they're having to be forced to pledge allegiance to whatever that is. They're not allowed to make a choice and decide for themselves. I mean, what that actually does is it sends out a signal, right? That the supposed truth is too fragile to stand up to scrutiny. Which, taking that a step further, implies that it might not actually be true. And when we believe in something, we grant a type of authority to the source, right? That authority is a type of credit that we as humans seem to forget or don't realize we're issuing all day long, and we issue it in something when we believe in it. We're extending credit to the source, and we're granting it authority over our perceptions, which is what forms our reality.
Now, most people don't have the privilege of researching these debates. People don't have the privilege because they're working 9 to 5, a minimum wage, and they're hungry, and they're just busy trying to live and survive. What they normally do is they outsource their thinking on where the truth lies to trusted voices in the media. So it's why it becomes so important to manipulate the media, so that those trusted voices that people are looking to are no longer giving them at least the best understanding of the truth they have, but are also peddling the agenda of power. When you're in a situation like that, it becomes difficult to define reality and therefore difficult to challenge government on whether or not they are sticking to their promises, because everything gets shifted, everything's relative. The Overton window keeps moving.
But that authority is hollow and inauthentic if it has to be attained through these illegitimate means or has to be propped up or, quote, enforced via censorship and coercion. Which says a lot more about the so-called, quote, reality that's being forced upon everyone than it does about the information that they're keeping from everyone. I mean, it reminds me of this quote I recently heard about schools and how things really started to go south when they stopped teaching kids how to think, but what to think. Which is a pretty big distinction, right? Wish I could remember who said that. Anyway, this is just something that I was thinking about ruminating over this video. Because I personally think there's something quite liberating in seeing this wall, in seeing this box for the digital cage that it is, instead of presenting this idea that it's this wide open field, when really it is just this small box. Because if that's the level we're at, we're getting much closer to when that's not going to be the case anymore. Because unbalanced systems such as this never stay that way for long. Historically speaking. Someone's cards are showing, and their hand is obviously not very good. It means the emperor is all kinds of naked, guys. All kinds of naked. Okay? Does not have clothes. And when you see that going on, it means change is coming.
That's just wall. There's no way through.
Things are not always what they seem in this place. So, you can't take anything for granted.
Hey!